Hello and welcome to the Planner Pals podcast, a podcast hosted by two true Planner Pals. My name is Mark and I go by Mark Your Pages.
And I am Jess, or Jessie Corinne, and this is another episode that has been brought to us by the wonderful Planner Pals over on YouTube, that being our official community over there. If you would like to join up, we would love to have you. Not only do you get to essentially dictate what we talk about, but you also get all of these episodes as soon as they're uploaded, which can be up to a week, possibly more in advance. If you wanted to join up, you just need to hit the join button beside the Planner Pals podcast name over in the kind of like YouTube description box, or you can navigate over to the channel page and you can find stuff over there. But Mark, what are we talking about today?
Ooh, this is a really good one. So gotta love these official Planner Pals over there. Today we're gonna be talking about trends that we have fallen into in the planner space. Now, immediate caveat, this doesn't mean that we necessarily are still doing them, but it's something that we saw online, saw in a group of people did and said, ooh, FOMO, gotta do this too. So we'll be sharing kind of the good, the bad, the ugly, if we're still using it, if we're not. And it's gonna be a really great episode. So Jess, I'll go ahead and let you kick off with like the very first one, because I feel like yours is like, yeah, I should have written this down on mine too.
Definitely. And I think that in particular, when I was, feeling like a discombobulated mess, I didn't know what was going on. I had like all of these plans and all of these places, and I'm finally like, I'm going to get my life together. So not only did I find bullet journaling, yay, but more specifically, I found that every single person that I came across online was using the LT 1917. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I must have it. That's the thing. That's how we do this correctly, right? To the extent where I feel like there's a very good reason why bullet journal and LT 1917 now work together, because that connection is just so strong. And I definitely was an LT 1917 fangirl. I was like, from the first one that I had, I'm like, oh, I'm going to have a full rainbow of these. I'm going to work through them in like reverse rainbow order. The first one I got was the anthracite color, because I'm like, oh, maybe I want something a little more neutral, just in case I don't want to, be carrying around this flashing like a hot pink notebook or whatever, being like, oh my gosh, guys, look at me, I'm so organized. Make it a little more discreet. And then the next one I got, I'm like, okay, well, if we're working backwards from like a reverse kind of rainbow order, we'll get a purple. Then we got a dark blue. Then we got a regular blue. And then I just randomly got a red one, because I'm like, I obviously need to start learning Japanese, and red is the only color I can use for that. And then I got a hot pink one, because I'm like, okay, maybe we'll just build the rainbow out from both ends of the spectrum. And then after I had like 6 of them, I'm like, okay, yeah, this notebook isn't actually for me. The paperweight was way too thin. Being able to see everything throughout like the entire notebook on the reverse sides of the page and stuff was doing my head in. So although I was a fangirl, I did have to kind of, put down my fangirl card eventually and say, yeah, I need to move to something that has thicker paper.
Yeah, the red one was my very first one too, and I vividly remember paying maybe $20 for that and being like, who the hell would ever pay this much money for a notebook? Like, this thing better fix my life for $20, because everything else that I had previously was either a free notebook or, just like a lined one that I got somewhere else. Mine is a little bit more like chicken before the egg, or egg before the chicken, where I discovered bullet journaling first and then saw everybody's with those notebooks. So I'm very much in line with you on this trend too. And I think I only ended up buying maybe 2 of them total before I, much like you, felt very similarly to the paper and kind of the ghosting and all of that, just because I didn't know any better. And then, you find a notebook that doesn't do that and you feel as if you have found the garden of Planner Eden. You're like, this is special. This is right. This feels good.
No, very that. I found that for a while I was holding out. It wasn't so bad, especially when I wasn't doing anything that was particularly decorative, I suppose. But as soon as I started to get a little bit more drawing heavy and really wanted that kind of, I guess, art to shine, I didn't want things showing through from the other side, because it would just distract from the line work, to the extent where I was trying to, maybe use every second page in some kind of cases, maybe stick pages together. But then it's like, cool, I'm wasting, well, not using in the way that it's intended to be used, half a notebook, so that then I don't have this ghosting and bleeding problem. Why not just get a notebook that won't have that problem?
Yeah, in some of my first notebooks, I used to put a sticky note in the very beginning for the pages that I skipped, because much like you, like I wanted a nice, fresh, clean page when I got started. And I was like, okay, well, I can't have this ghosting on the other side. And I definitely made it really far on that sticky note, because I would use those for like collection pages, or if there was like a collection that went to like another page beyond what I had already planned. It was like, well, that's not a big deal. I'm just writing notes on this. This isn't something that I'm showing online at all. all. But yeah, it was definitely one of those things where it's just like, yeah, this just doesn't make me feel good having to like read through my previous writing. And I also was a really big fan of like really fine point pens as well. And you could even feel the pen on the other side of that paper too. And I was just like, no, 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 I want this to be clean because it was at the very beginning of this Instagram bullet journal fun time job thing. And I was taking pictures of it every second of the day.
Yeah, and I think that the photographing aspect in particular is probably why I decided to move away from that trend. If I was just I don't even want to say if I was just planning for myself, because I probably would eventually have gotten to the same kind of point as well. But I do find that I actually quite like an LT 1917 if you're just using black pen in the notebook with like regular handwriting and you get that kind of used feeling. That is very satisfying, but it doesn't align with how I actually enjoy planning and actually enjoy using my planners, and thus it's a no from me.
So much like I said before, just, the chicken before the egg or egg before the chicken, as much as I was on that same LT trend, bullet journaling for me was kind of my very first like planner trend that I followed because when I started looking into bullet journaling more officially, the 2017 ish, I feel like that was the height of bullet journaling. Everybody was doing it. All the big creators of the past were creating then. I saw what they were using, how they were using it, which then got me into some other things too. But I really loved that time for bullet journal itself because so many of us were still figuring it out. And we were saying, okay, we're by the book, literally in some cases reading the bullet journal book, right? And really understanding what this method was, why it was potentially working for us, what was or wasn't working in that same breath. It's like, yeah, this is great. I'm doing this, but I don't totally love this. And then starting to see the bullet journal morph into kind of more of that DIY planning, which I think is probably more along the lines of where we are now. I mean, I still personally follow the method very much so, and kind of how I do my day to day, week to week kind of planning and collection pages. But I definitely have added my own flares to it to kind of fit my specific needs. And that's something else that I really just personally love about it. I think it's why it's still a topic of conversation is because it's really morphed and evolved over time based off of users' feedback and just how we use it for our daily lives.
Yeah, I found that at least where I'm based, bullet journaling was probably was like a really big trend, but because living at the ass end of the world and such, we get everything late. You know when TikTok was actually like a big up and comer. I know it's still around. Okay, I'm not that old, and you'd get all of the memes and stuff on Instagram like 2 to 3 weeks later. Yeah, that's New Zealand. So I think that I found it probably around the same time that it was getting big in other parts of the world. It's just that it wasn't necessarily big here, but it did capture my interest quite quickly. So I think that I guess I would probably say that I, quote, fell for this trend as well. But I also wonder if I have ever, outside of maybe a handful of months, done bullet journaling aligned with the original method. Like, there have been elements that I certainly took from it, and terminology in particular that I've taken from it, but I think that overall, as like the system and the practice and that kind of a thing, I would definitely say that there has not really been a section of my planning journey that I was a like bullet journal purist.
I mean, early on I was. I think that's also why I ended up getting the Leuchtturm, right? Like that notebook was just what everyone used, and so you felt as if you weren't actually bullet journaling unless you had their notebook with their brand name on it. And that was something that I found to be very interesting, especially kind of growing up with the brand itself and like learning more about it. Is bullet journal until probably the past few years wasn't really a product. I mean, it was a method, a product, I guess how you think about it, but it was just one of those things where you could technically do it in anything, but for some reason, and they did a great job of marketing it this way. Like you wanted their notebook, which was just another dot grid notebook that you could get anywhere, but it felt more official when it had their branding on it. Really made you feel like you were like a part of something.
But no, I would agree. I think that in particular, the fact that they have their own notebook now, I wonder what this has done in terms of their branding because so many people refer to dot grid notebooks as bullet journals, but they're not. They are technically different things. And I mean, you could technically have something that was a bullet journal that is not in a dot grid notebook. Like you could have a lined notebook that is a bullet journal because you're using the bullet journal method and the system and all of that kind of stuff in that notebook. So it's kind of like an interest point, like the way that the term, I suppose, is being utilized by the public versus the intention by the creator and all of that kind of thing. Not getting into it right here, right now, but it is of interest to me.
Yeah, that's a whole episode just on its own because even just recently I was in like a Staples or something and Martha Stewart has like a package of like a planner and stuff and it says bullet journal and I was like, "Oh, this how is this allowed?" Because I mean, years ago, bullet journal proper was going after people on Instagram that had bullet journal in their name. Like, how are you letting Martha Stewart do this? But bullet journal girly 69, sharing her stuff online isn't allowed to have that in her name, right? Or whatever, it might have been. It kind of blows my mind. Again, I need to stop there because we'll get into this whole sidetrack about it. Future episode. What's another trend for you, Jess, outside of this space? Save us.
Bullet Journal Girly 69. I love it. I hope that handle's not taken. And if it is, good for you, Bullet Journal Girly 69. But I think the next trend for me, or the one that kind of like really, I was going to say punched me in the throat, came to mind, is what I mean. The one that really came to mind when we were talking about this episode is the idea of waterfall tabs. I love waterfall tabs. I love the way they look. I love the decorative element. I like the kind of creativity that goes to designing the pages because you've got a different amount of page real estate for each of them. Now, if you don't know what waterfall tabs are, first of all, they're not tabs. It's a complete lie. I don't like the term, but it's essentially like a series of subsequent pages in your notebook where you've cut down certain portions of the page to kind of get this waterfall or this kind of like staggered edge. So the first page you cut down the most, it's going to be the narrowest. The next page you cut down just a little bit less. So there's technically more of the page there, and then the next one you've got a little more of the page there, so on and so forth, for however many pages you're using. Typically speaking, people will do this for like maybe a main setup in their monthly kind of setup that they're doing, so you've got a decent chunk of pages so you can really see like that staggered edge, and typically the staggered edge will then be lined with something like washi tape or maybe colored in or something like that, and people do some super gorgeous and creative things with this. So not only just using different tape selections or whatever so that you get like a really cool color palette going, but also building it into some kind of other decoration. One in particular that I've seen have been like waves at the beach. So they have, this series or this kind of staggered edge, and then each of them is done in a different shade of blue so that you get that gradient so that you can kind of see the beach waves. It's so cool. So it is definitely something I have done before, but I also find that it does work better in particular notebooks. Like if you're using a traveler's size notebook, that's not going to be great in terms of page real estate left over if you start cutting away horizontally on your page. Whereas something like a square or a B5, like you can technically get away with it in an A5 as well, but you just need to be mindful of how much real estate you use and how much like you have left on the page so that you can actually do your planning and keep your planner being functional. But it is one that I love. I think it's gorgeous. I would not necessarily say I'm like, sad that I fell into this trend, but I do feel like sometimes I just did it for the trend itself, not for any particular like functional reason.
Yeah, that is interesting to think through it. I mean, you were the first one that really introduced me to that idea of them. I think most planner pals know, and if you're never listened before, I'm not a big fan of this because I don't like to cut pages in my journal. Like I'm more of a folded over kind of guy, but it does look really nice. I think that that's definitely something that I can appreciate about the waterfall tabs and how it's used. And I know they are and can be functional tabs as well. I just think, and as I've shared before, it's just one of those things that just is like not totally worth it for me. I might do like a tab or something like that, but I also have like stationery that you can add inside of your notebook that adds those tabs. So I don't have to do it with paper and cut things away. And you make a great point, and something that is, I think, a really good one overall too, is like you kind of have to have the space for it to work. If you're going to have the waterfall tabs and be able to see what's behind each piece, I mean, that first page is not a whole lot necessarily to write on as you get into it and the further back you go. So I think for me that's the other reason that I don't necessarily love it or wouldn't, and again has never been a trend for me, is because I'm just not likely to do that, because I'm just like, no, every inch of my planner needs to have the option to use it, even if I may not use it, right, or I might not fill it all out. I want to have that there just in case.
Yeah, and I do find that depending on how you like to do your setups and such, it can also be something that kind of almost gets in the way of the functionality. So for instance, when it comes to doing my monthly setups or cyclic setups or whatever, the first thing that I like to have is a calendar grid, and typically that will take up a decent chunk of a full spread. So if I'm then cutting away part of a page, it's like, okay, cool. You're either going to have really tiny waterfall tabs down the side, or you're going to have to put the calendar at the back of the setup rather than the front. But it kind of makes the most sense at the front, at least for me. So it's kind of like a balancing act between like the decorative stuff and making it pretty and having that kind of like, yay, I get to live in my FOMO moment versus having something that's like actually going to be functional for you. I also find that in terms of waterfall tabs as a functional thing, like, because some people say like, oh, it helps me navigate in my notebook, which is fair, because technically speaking, from that very front spread, you can see that tabbed edge and flip to any page. That's all good. But it only works in one direction, because once you flip to that page, all of the waterfall tabs from the first ones that are a lot smaller, you can't see them anymore. Whereas if you did something like a regular tabbed system, either because you've cut down the side of the page and left a little kind of like nubbin out the side or something, or maybe you've gone and stuck tabs that do stick out the side of the notebook, which is not my personal preference because then they just get in the way of things and they get dirty and bent and whatever. But some people like them. I feel like those are just more functional though, because you can use them in both directions. You don't just have to use them from the front, and then as soon as you turn to the page, it's like they don't exist anymore.
It's definitely a more thoughtful way about going about it, but I definitely understand the aesthetic and the interest and the creativity behind it too. I mean, some of the things and cutouts that I've seen when it comes to these types of journals are absolutely amazing. Like you said, you've got the waves. I've seen, I want to say like keys almost. Like it really makes your journal into like this really cool design, kind of functional thing, but just looks so special. And that's, I think, a big part about the personalization side of the journals too, and why I think so many people also have gotten into those trends.
Yeah, I think the personalization aspect and like the kind of creative things that you can really do to lean into a theme, absolutely gorgeous. So it's like, I understand why I fell for it. I get it. But I think it is one that I'm a little bit more mindful of now because it's like, okay, you just doing this because it looks cool, or are you doing this because it's actually going to help you plan better or something like that? But what would be your next one that you fell into?
Yeah, so I think my biggest one is behind me on the wall, and that would be fountain pens. Oh, and also on my bookshelf and two giant binders as well, and over on my shelves on both sides of me as well. I mean, I really went all into this. I just remember seeing someone write with a Lamy in their notebook, and I thought that looked so fancy and so cool. It scared me because I wasn't sure what a fountain pen did exactly. I think in my mind's eye, it was this old stodgy thing that leaked everywhere, and that, only certain people could use it. And that was well before I found modern fountain pens and kind of the beauty of them all. And then now look at me, years later with quite the collection of them. But this is definitely a trend that I'm still on. That would be a very sad thing to not be on this trend anymore after all these years. I think for me, what I really loved about it, from what I saw to what I'm doing now, is just really enjoying writing. We all have our favorite pens. We've talked about some of our planner essentials in past episodes, and definitely talked about our favorite pens and tools that we've used. But the fountain pen to me is just like another level of personalization. It's, how am I feeling this week? Am I feeling extra glittery? Am I feeling expensive? Am I feeling, cheap, get the work done? And then being able to mix that with fountain pen ink and all of the different colors and combinations that you can make out of the kind of those two things together, really get me excited to write inside of my journal. Like, I really look forward to popping open a pen and writing with it and seeing what the ink looks like on the page as I write with it. And really just kind of came down to like a handful of people at first, but then now that I'm like really in it, I'm following more people who are also into fountain pens. So I just see it, 3, 5 times what it was before. And it makes me really happy. It feels like you're part of a little community. It's probably a pretty big community, but just seeing how different people use them and what they do with them, it's always been very cool to me. So I'm glad I hopped on this trend. I'm glad I'm still a part of it. And I'm glad that I'm also helping and hopefully inspiring other people to use fountain pens as well, because it's a lot of fun.
No, I am definitely marked safe from this trend, but I am so glad that you are carrying it for both of us. I do. Do you have a video walking through your entire collection?
I did a video a while, maybe a year or so ago. Yeah, where I walked through kind of everything. It's definitely grown since then. But yeah, I've kind of talked about all different ones, price points, and things along that line, just to let people know like there is kind of a different approach to it depending on what you want and what you need from it. So yeah.
No, I think that I wish that I loved anything as much as you seem to love fountain pens, I swear. But I understand what you mean though about like, getting to have not only the different kind of pen itself and its design and the nib size and the nib type and all of those kind of things, and then pairing that with a particular ink color and, whether it has the shimmer or the glitter or like whatever else and such. That personalization aspect is really enticing. I can understand that. Again, I'm still marked safe from it because I'm just going to be over here using my mark on like this is fine. But I do appreciate that it can kind of help you, like, side note, I'm very much into this idea of romanticizing life right now and just like making the mundane feel fancy. And I feel like fountain pens are like right in there. Like they've set up a tent, they're part of the camp, all right? I think that, being able to make your writing feel special in that way, there is something very appealing about it.
Yeah, there totally is. I think that's really what got me into it as well. I mean, I got into it with just regular black ink because I thought it looked so nice and so fancy. And then, yeah, you start to get deeper and deeper. And now I'm so addicted to finding different types of inks. And there's a lot of stores too that will organize them by the effect that you're trying to get. So if you are looking for a shimmer ink, they'll kind of organize their site by that. My favorite are like high shading inks. And so that's like as you're writing with it, like it kind of pulls in certain parts. So your letters have this really cool different gradient to it, depending how the ink is drying or how light or how dark it is. And that's kind of that romanticizing part of it. After I finish my weekly and I look back on that, it just has so much character in the letters. I'm just writing down notes and tasks for work. I'm not writing poems or love letters or anything like that. I'm literally like, email this person about this project. Don't forget to, submit your timesheet, but I love the way those look on the page. And so I think that's really kind of the big part of it. It's just kind of grown and grown and grown, where at first it was literally just black ink, Lamy pen. And then now it's like this giant collection with way too many inks.
Yeah, I do think it helps to make the mundane feel more special. And I like that point that you had about, what was it, the shading inks or whatnot? Because I have long been the type of person who is like, I want the blackest of black ink. If there is like any imperfection, if there's any kind of like gradient or shading or whatnot, no, that pen is dead to me. I do not want it. But then you gave me Iris, and TikTok Croc, I find, does that, or at least the way that I was writing did that. And I'm like, oh, look at you with your little like inconsistencies looking so fanciful. We love that for her. Iris now actually has black in her though. She's good. She actually got filled up. So this is what the platinum carbon something or other. I don't remember what it's called. It's black. So this is good. I like this. I write with this. But my other two fountain pens that I have, because I have three now. Look at her go. She hasn't filled up the other two yet.
My problem is that I fill them up and then I don't want to waste the ink, even though there's not a whole lot inside of the converters. I know that. But so right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 5 pens that have ink in them from the past 5 weeks, but that I'm using a totally different pen right now that just has like regular black ink in it. So it's one of those things where it's like, I love to write with them, but then I'm like, well, I've moved on from that color and that, theme and that thing for the week. Like one of my pens has like, it's called Blood Fall is the name of it. So it's this very like iron, red, brownish kind of color. And it looked good for that week and kind of how I decorated my page and the pen itself. But like, I wouldn't write a note with that because someone would look at that and be like, ew, this looks disgusting. Why are you writing with this color? Like, it's one thing to write with blue, but now we're writing with blood, rust, orange, red,
Yeah, I think that's the thing that I also find with fountain pens and like inks in particular. I love the way they look when they're swatched out. I love the little ink bottles. I think they're absolutely gorgeous and cute and just like, wow, I can very much take that, like, Pokemon gotta catch 'em all kind of like mindset to it if I was not careful. But at the end of the day, I do just prefer to write with black ink on paper and be like, yeah, easy. Everything is consistent, especially if it's a pen that I can just pick up and go with. I know that when you fill them up, they last a long time. Iris has definitely proven that to me. But I'm also like getting messy fingers, the heebie-jeebies. Oh my gosh. So I'll let this be your trend and I'll just be on the sidelines like, woo, go Mark.
Well, what can I cheer you on next, Jess? What's your next followed trend?
I don't know if this is what we should be cheering for, but it is definitely one that I fell into. Oh, and I think that this one actually is kind of like a two-parter. There's like two kind of aspects to this that in my mind I see them as separate trends, but they do feed into each other. So first one first. I think that over time, I kind of fell into this mindset after seeing other people and what they were doing in particular of this kind of more is more decoration and the idea of like, how can we bring even more decorative elements into something to effectively turn each setup into a little work of art? Now, I'm not out here spending 3 weeks doing a pencil drawing for a cover page. Some people are, and it's great, and I love that for them. And if that's how you want to use your creativity, more power to you. But I did find that, like, the time required, or the time that I felt was required to pre plan my plans before I put them into my planner so that I could execute on my plans and get my plans done, was ludicrous. Like, I was spending several hours figuring out how I was going to set up a page, or how I was going to bring together a theme, or how I was going to have everything laid out, which was good in a way that I was thinking about it, because then it's like, okay, well, once you actually get it into your planner, it's going to work really well for you. But it also meant that I felt like I couldn't put anything else in there without doing the same level of pre-thought, which kind of held me back from putting things into my planner. And part of this was that more is more style of decoration. So figuring out, like, how to marry everything together in such a way that it was functional and decorative. So that was one part of it. But the other part of this was that when you're trying to bring a whole bunch of decoration into your layouts with that more is more mindset, you are so at risk of falling into the overconsumption pit of planning. And I do feel like for some people, consumption and the buying of supplies, and I know that, like, we joke about this as a community, it's like, oh yeah, buying supplies is a separate hobby to actually using the supplies. Haha, is it though? Like, because at the end of the day, I have way more fun using the stuff than I do acquiring the stuff. And acquiring the stuff just gives me, like, more money, more problems kind of a thing. Like, if I have too much stuff, then it's like, cool, now I have to do a whole bunch of, like, admin work to manage the stuff, make sure that the stuff isn't going bad, make sure that I'm using the stuff. Like, obviously it depends on what kind of stuff we're talking about here, but washi tape goes bad. Like, eventually the stickiness fades. Stickers go bad. Eventually they fuse to the sticker sheet and you can't get them off anymore. Ask me how I know. Ah. So I just found that, like, I was in this mindset of, like, oh, everything needs to be new, everything needs to be fresh. You can't do a theme you've already done before because we need to have novelty, otherwise you won't like it. And that's not actually the case. Like, some of my favorite themes I would definitely do again using supplies I still have because I loved the theme so much the first time. So it's like getting myself into this headspace of, like, constantly acquiring and constantly needing to get more and such. But then pairing that with my, oh, gotta hoard it like a dragon, every sticker is precious kind of mindset. It's like, these are two conflicting mindsets that do not work well together. It's like, yeah, I've got to bring in more stuff, but also I'm not allowed to use the stuff because if I use the stuff, then the stuff is gone. So definitely fell victim to that one. Wasn't great for me.
I mean, I have a respect for that type of planning. I mean, after our conversation with Erin and her sharing a lot of her insights about how she does it, I was able to, like, walk away from that conversation and that episode feeling really confident and, like, taking on some of those pieces. I think for me, and this is definitely, like we just said, like, this is your trend and this is your thing. I have no need necessarily to fall into this. I have bits and pieces, and mostly when it comes to, like, washi tape or paper scraps or whatever that is, but I'm not really putting them together often. They're there. Sometimes I will think about it, but it doesn't mean that, like, I'm actively doing that. And I think for me, it's mostly just out of not being comfortable with it. Like we talked in that episode with Erin, is like, I don't feel like I have the skill set necessarily to do it. So for me, I don't worry too much about really adding a lot of that inside of my journal. And I don't really have a drive or a want to. Every now and again, I'll get, like, a little, like, oh, I should do something a little bit extra this week. I had some extra time, or I saw something online and I'm like, oh, I have to do this. But I think once I really get into it, though, I just have kind of almost like an adverse reaction, because it looked really great when it was on my phone in my hand looking at it. It does not look so great inside of my notebook right now. And then, like, I'm mad at myself about that.
Yeah, I kind of got into this space of really needing to consider, am I changing my planning to accommodate decoration, or am I using decoration to embellish my planning? And that second one is really what I kind of wanted to be doing, but I found myself very much in the first camp. So it's like, yeah, we've kind of changed the way you go about doing your planning just so that you can accommodate these decorative elements, rather than using it as a way to kind of, like, make planning fun and incentivize you to get in there. Because I know I'm the kind of person who needs to have at least some decoration so that it is fun and it is enjoyable, and I'm more likely to get in and actually use it and get stuff done. But I need to make sure that I'm not, like, falling into that other side where it's like, cool, decoration first, functionality second kind of a thing.
Yeah, I think many of us have stumbled on that when we've tried the trend and we saw something online, and then, yeah, you're done and you're like, and where do I write? Because this thing is just covered with photos and pictures and tapes and stickers and everything else. And you left yourself like a 5 by 5 square to write your entire week's to-do list. Like, it doesn't work out that way. Obviously, that's a very extreme thing, but I've been there before where I was like, oh, decoration, all these things. Then I go to like write in my notes and I can barely fit like a full thought in a column. And suddenly my Monday through Friday, dated column where I was like, oh, I'll just do daily logging in the column. I'm already on Wednesday. It's not the end of the day on Monday yet. It's just like I focus so much on the planning, the layout, the different pieces that I'm completely forgetting about the actual, like, my personal user experience of that page because I went a little too far with the decorating. So I feel you on that one.
Yeah, and I think that you can kind of have a similar thing when you see something online, you really like the style of it or the look of it or whatever, so you try and recreate it in your own planner or your own journal, and then realize it's like, oh, actually, this is just not aligned with how I plan. I found that in particular with certain horizontal layouts, because I feel like a horizontal layout does usually lend itself well to certain types of decoration, and the layouts end up looking so dang cute. But I'm the type of person who likes a long ass list. Like, I need a full column of space per day because I'd be writing every single tiny granular task that I need to get done, because that's the kind of thing that makes me feel like I have my stuff together. And it makes me feel like my mind isn't like a, I don't know, noodle mess, because I've actually gotten the thoughts out of there onto paper so that I can prioritize them and make sense of them and all of those kind of things. What would be your next one?
So my next trend is very, very new to me. I just had someone on YouTube tell me that I'm not doing this, even though I'm calling it, but that would be junk journaling. I'm a very specific type of junk journaler, and this was a trend that I saw online where people were using the stamp punch out, paper punch, and stamping out papers and things from magazines and cards, and then collecting them essentially inside of a notebook. So I started doing that because I really love aesthetically how it looks. And I've just been like all in on it for, I want to say maybe a little over a month now. I've created several different pages that I'm very proud of with it. And I think what I like about it, it's almost opposite of what you were just sharing about, like feeling as if like, you've decorated a lot and now you're not able to kind of fit the functionality in there. What I love about it is that it doesn't need to be functional at all. For me, the way that I'm utilizing it is very much just straight creativity. It's, creating themes out of different little pieces of paper that I have. It's, really, putting a story together in some cases, or trying to match colors and patterns, or not try to match them at all. And I've been having so much fun with it. And that's why, like, I get a little, iffy when someone tries to tell me that I'm not doing it right. It reminds me very much, I'm like having flashbacks of when I started bullet journaling, and someone's like, oh, that's not how you bullet journal. Like, if someone's telling you that junk journaling has no rules and you can do whatever you want, then why are you telling me that the way that I'm doing it is not junk journaling? But I think mostly it comes from just the spot of like a lot of junk journalers. And if you're not familiar with junk journaling, is really just it's called junk because you're really finding paper scraps and ephemera and like different things like that and kind of collaging it together on a page. Maybe because mine is lined up on a straight line and it has a specific theme with the stamps. Maybe that's why some people feel like it's not junk journaling, but to me it is, and I absolutely love it. And it's something that I also don't feel this like desire necessarily to make sure I have to keep up with it every single day. It's just like a creative exercise I can do when I want to.
Yeah, I also, hearing this person saying it's not junk journaling, I feel like it's just a really good time to highlight the fact that, like, just because you have a thought doesn't mean you have to share it. Because I also, outing myself here or whatever, I saw your video about junk journaling, and I did have a moment. I'm like, does that actually count? Like, is that junk journaling? And then second thought was, just who the fuck cares? Like, why does it matter? If I'm out here saying that I'm not the bullet journal police, and like I don't care if you're like, carving your notes into freaking like a tabernacle or whatever, then why do I care whether Mark calls it junk journaling? But also, where we have like, this very specific picture in mind when it comes to certain things, like junk journaling in particular, I just assume that this person, and probably me to an extent, has this very particular image in their mind as to what junk journaling looks like when it's finished. And that doesn't necessarily align with what you're doing. But that doesn't mean that what you're doing isn't junk journaling.
Yeah, I'm literally making art with junk. Like, I have a video over on my YouTube that I took one of the value pack ad envelopes and literally punched things out of that to create a page. It is interesting. I mean, I totally get it because, I mean, in my mind, what I like, the part that makes me feel comfortable about the way that I'm doing it is that there is some structure to it, because I don't feel confident enough to create something that's not structured. So being able to, punch out something that's in the shape of a stamp and line that up on a horizontal line and have even spacing between each of those on a page, like that makes me feel comfortable. That makes me feel good. Like again, I'm excited at the end of it to be finished with it. It's similar to like when I do like the stamping radial patterns and stuff like that. That's just something that I like to do. And someone would be like, oh, that's a mandala or whatever those things are called. I'm like, maybe, but I call it a radial stamp pattern. Like it, like again, who cares?
And I think also it's like similar things can have different names because technically speaking, like, yeah, it is a radial stamp pattern because it is radial and you did it with stamps. Like, that makes sense. It's just a descriptive name. And in a similar way, a mandala is kind of radial and has a repeating pattern or whatever else. They can be similar but have different names. That is fine. And you can also have it that things that look completely different also fall under the same umbrella term. Because junk journaling, if we take it at face value, is like, okay, journaling with junk, that's what you're doing. You've just given yourself some guardrails or some guidelines to help make it approachable. And I think that that's a great thing to do. Like, especially when creativity can be so open ended and can be so scary because of it, it's nice to have that in for people by giving them some kind of structure or guidelines around something that makes them feel more comfortable. So me and other Nelly naysayer, you don't pay us two minds. It's all good. You do what you're doing, Mark.
And I'm having so much fun.
Exactly.
All right, Jess, what's your next big trend that you're on?
So this one I feel like I've actually come through the other side of, or at least I'm slowly getting there. And this would be the trend of the fat planner stack. You know, where people have at the end of the video, like, this is my planner stack, or what they're now calling their planner ecosystem. Ugh, I can't.
Oh, I prefer ecosystem over like planner stack personally.
But I'm like, it's not an ecosystem. There's no ecology anywhere to be seen. Okay, please. Like, somebody who knows is it etymology? It's not entomology. Somebody who knows the history of the word ecosystem, please like hit us up in the comments and let me know what it actually means and where it came from. But in my mind, I'm like, your fleet of notebooks or journals or planners is not an ecosystem. Like, sure, things can work together and stuff, but I'm like, it doesn't feel very eco. Anyway, that aside, the trend itself, the idea of having multiple planners in your stack of planners or multiple journals or notebooks or whatnot, definitely one that I fell victim to. And I feel like, in particular for me, this was because I previously made a lot of content about planners and journals and notebooks. So it's like, okay, well, we have this way to, like, justify the amount that I had is probably the best way to word it, because it's like, the more you have, the more content you can make, the more content you can make, the more like valuable your channel is. So it's a very kind of like cumulative causation. It's like, oh yeah, we get more notebooks so we can make more video about notebooks, but we want to make more videos so that we get more notebooks, yada, yada, yada. And in a way, I do appreciate that I fell into this trend because it just helped me fast track my learning about what works for me as a planner and what doesn't. Which parts do make sense to have separate from others, which parts need their own space versus the ones that don't, which parts can be combined, which parts can be done in a different size or style or whatever else. But I also think that going back to that last trend of the overconsumption and such, this was also used to justify the accumulation of notebooks, of which I have quite a few now. I've gotten better though. I did a big declutter. I got rid of over 100, and I don't mean got rid of like went down and burnt them in a fire pit or something. They've all gone to new homes now. But I do think that it's interesting that you can have a trend where you kind of like regret falling into it, but at the same time, you very much value what you got out of it or what you learned on the other side.
Yeah, I think there shouldn't be any shame or feeling of failure if you didn't keep up with something. I think that's the whole part about experimenting with our planners and our materials and things like that. I mean, even going back to like the junk journaling thing, it's like maybe the way that I'm doing it is just the gateway drug to eventually creating something more, stereotypical junk journaling pages, right? Like I have all the stuff to do it. It's just about like how you're putting together, kind of in your same way. I mean, I think the reason that people call it an ecosystem is just because in that case, and hopefully it's the right way, it's elements that are working together to kind of create a sphere of a thing. Like, yes, ecosystem and all of that is very much based out of like nature and stuff like that. But the whole idea of it really kind of like integrating with each other, working together to create it. That's why I like the idea of a planner ecosystem versus the stack, because the stack to me is almost just like a collection of all the different planners that people use together, versus the ecosystem I can see essentially having multiple notebooks that are there to try to accomplish a similar goal or to compartmentalize one's life, but it still kind of is contributing to the larger one person, right, that's utilizing that.
I think that the thing that gets me about the term itself is the eco part, because in my, mind, ecological, living things, some people could argue like, oh yeah, my planet's a living document kind of a thing, but I'm like, just call it a system then. It could be your planet system. I would have no qualms with that term because I feel like there's no way that I could fight it, and I don't think I would because I feel like that just makes more sense. But as you were saying,
No, I mean it's an important part. I think again, if you're taking it literally, it's the water interacting with the soil, and then the soil interacting with the sun that interacts with the flowers, right? That like creates the ecosystem. Like I totally get the science. It's the science nerd inside of you that can't let go of that, right? But like from a big piece, like I call like the Apple sphere, right? The idea of all of the Apple products working together in some way, shape, or form, right? I'm like, oh, you're 100% inside the Apple sphere when like you have the iPad and the laptop and the phone and the, like you have all of those things and they all work together. I think that's kind of a similar type idea here. So maybe it's like a planner sphere instead of ecosystem, right? It's just the idea that it's all encompassing as a part of like a goal or end. But I, though, similar to kind of what we were just saying, though, like I think it's probably not that important to really differentiate between it. But like a planner stack, like I said before, is just all the different things that you're using together. I don't know that necessarily they're all working together. They might, like I said, just be like different parts of your life that you're bringing out of there. But I'm the type of person, like I've never fallen into that because I think the most that I've ever like had of a stack was like two, maybe three at a time, and that was just way too much. I'm like, I couldn't do it with two. When I tried to have like work and life separate, I didn't. Like even for the podcast, I created a whole notebook just for this podcast, and I don't use it anymore because I don't put things there. Like I would write it on, like one of my like cards or something like that. Instead, it doesn't really fit its purpose now. So like I don't need to add another one to my one journal that I have now, essentially. So I mean, I feel lucky on this one too, because I mean, well, no, I'm a liar because I also now do have that like new like trifold Jenny Bick one that I'm using for my junk journaling, which eventually will hold an A5 size Archer Olive notebook for my next journal. So like technically it's a stack. It's three notebooks that are just held together with some elastic, but
I think it counts. It's just like a mini stack. Because in mine, I used to have the everyday journal, the yearly collections journal, the long term collections journal, the reading journal, the notes book for like personal learning, the R&D notebook, the 5-year notebook. I had the scribble book, the brainstorming book, probably more. So like my stack was like 9, and technically speaking, they did all have separate functions, but it got to a point where it's like, will I actually think to go back and check in with this? Is this the natural place to go check for that information? Does this align with how I actually want to do my planning anymore? So technically speaking, I do still have a stack. Currently, I have the everyday journal, I have the 5-year journal, I have the reading journal, and I have a goal planner and a scribble book because we love a scribble book. But the rest of them, I've either moved into Notion or I just do on scrap paper. It didn't need a notebook for it. So I think that going from like 9 down to 5, that's pretty good. I was going to say going from 9 to 5, then I'm like Dolly Parton pops up. What a way to make a living. Anyways.
I love it. I love Dolly. That was like one of the very first movies I ever saw. And I was like, this is a great movie. And then I love the song too. So perfection. I love it.
Didn't even know it was a movie. So I feel like I learned a thing today. But what's your next trend?
So I would say like my final trend that I kind of, well, not kind of, that I really got into is stamping inside of my bullet journal for functional reasons, but that has, of course, morphed into more designed elements as well. I remember seeing, and I cannot remember her name. She was in one of those Instagram pods that we were a part of, and she used to stamp her notebook pages like exclusively, and she did so good, like ridiculously good. And I was like, well, if she can do it, I can do it. And I started to dabble, and that is really where it started to waterfall, because when I realized that I could essentially almost like create like a printed page in a way utilizing stamps, I got the absolute perfect lettering, lines, elements. I didn't have to draw anything, but it was still ink on paper. And that made me feel really good about myself. Like that is just how it all started.
I think that was it Ashton Plans?
Yes.
Her stamping stuff made me like gave me the cute aggression because for the longest time I didn't realize they were stamps. So I was like, "Oh my god, you're drawing everything so perfectly and it looks so good." And I loved the kind of like clean and minimal look of her pages. And I feel like she only ever really shared them before the pen. God, they were so good looking. Never afterwards. That's how people know what you're doing. But gosh, it was so cute. I had so many of her pictures saved in my Instagram saves folder for like future inspiration that I just never acted on. But obviously you did.
Yeah, I mean, to the extreme that I have, 2 crates filled with stamps now, and for me, they really do kind of fall. I would say probably 70% of them are functional. Now, do I need 5 different sets that say Monday through Friday and Saturday and Sunday and weekend? No, but do I need the different fonts? Yes, you never know how I feel. Sometimes I feel like a serif, sometimes I feel like a sans serif. But I also kind of see it as like that stamp of creativity, pun intended there though. Like when someone like Carrie Bradford, for instance, comes out with a new font or something like that, letters, blocks that very much like align with what I want and what I like in my journal, I'm an instant buy. Everyday Explorers Co. Like they're another one that like literally they just put out some of the coolest stamps. They're really great quality. And early on, I didn't realize the importance of that. Like I was just going to the art store, the craft store, and I still do it now. Like for instance, like I just got this stamp set here. They're just drawn houses, right? But like could I do this? Probably. Like if I really wanted to. Am I going to? No, because I just have the stamp and I can just stamp it on my page. And so like now when I see those things, like I'm like, oh, that's my style. Like I would totally use this. I can almost envision how I'm going to use it on my page versus back in the day, I would just buy it just to buy it and be like, oh, maybe I'll use it. But I think that's just like the excitement of it. And I've even come to the point now too, Jess, because I know a lot of people don't like stamping because they see it as like advanced level, like Aaron was like, stamping's advanced level crafting for me. I love and hate at the same time, like get a little extra ink on the page or like, getting the extra little corner because you press too hard. Like I used to really hate that, but now I just accepted it because I know I can't get rid of it anyway. But it just adds like a fun personality to the page. It really becomes a part of the stamping way. I don't know if that's the right way to put it. But I think that's why I really fell into the trend, really, because like you said, it looks nice and neat. It can be. And then I can go ahead and take that to the next level and like make an entire bullet journal page out of it and love what I'm working with.
Yeah, I think that if I ever got into stamping, I would be very much in camp, like, way too anal about it. Like, as soon as you get that kind of little corner smudge, I'd be like, ugh. Because I think that part of me likes that idea of the kind of imperfection and how it becomes very much like a symbol of the fact that it's handmade, which is kind of nice. And I think that in certain themes and styles, I could totally get on board. Like if I was going very scrapbooky and very like, torn paper, organic kind of looking with little stamped headers, I could probably make my peace with it. But something like the way that Ashton was doing hers, where it was very clean, very minimal, very like, precise line work, the black ink on the white page, and just very crisp. Like, oh, if you got a corner smudge on that, I'd be like, nope, 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 cannot do this. I need to like stick something over it, get out the whiteout, stick the pages together, start again.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So this is definitely a trend that I could say like, yeah, it was a good one. I'm in pretty deep. I've got a lot. But I'm getting to the point where I'm really organizing them and making sure that I'm getting uses out of them and just being thoughtful about it too. Sometimes it's so easy to be like, not worry about it. But I'm just finding, sometimes I'll just look at it and like I'll pick one up and be like, okay, build around this theme, and that's a lot easier than trying to sometimes fit like your stamp into what you're already doing. Like I kind of start from the stamp and let that inspire me. So I think that's just a really fun way to plan and journal, and I'm all in.
I do love the reusability of stamps as well. Like, if you get a sticker set, obviously, you use the sticker set is gone, unless you're buying a digital sticker set and then printing and cutting them yourself. But stamp, you don't have to do that. You just ink it up, smack it down, probably lighter than smacking things down, because that's probably how you end up with Smudge City. But that idea of being able to use it as many times as you want without having to have, like, either multiple packs of stickers that you're purchasing or buying like a big ream of like sticker paper to use or whatever else. I do love that aspect of it. I just feel like I'm kind of, over there with what Erin was saying, like that's a high level skill. I'm like, too low level in terms of my ink anything journey to be able to do it in such a way that aligns nicely with my persnickety biscuit brain. Because as soon as I get that smudge on a theme that isn't supposed to have smudges, it's a no from me.
I can totally understand it.
But Planner Pals, we would love to hear from you. Did you fall victim to any of these trends, or were there any others that you've fallen victim to, either for like like, the good, the bad, the ugly. We would love to hear. Let us know either in the comments if you're watching on YouTube, or you can hit us up at plannerpalspodcast@gmail.com or over on Instagram at plannerpalspodcast.
Thank you so much to the YouTube Planner Pals joining the channel and the club. I don't know what we want to call it. Maybe we will eventually come up with a name, but what a great topic this was today. So if you'd like to contribute in the future, as we mentioned at the beginning of the episode, get episodes early, make sure you head over to our YouTube channel and you can join from there and start immediately receiving all the benefits.
As Mark said, we would absolutely love to have you with us. But for today, as always, thanks for watching.